When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Many of us have seen it, felt it, experienced it. One such story I'm going to share with you. My name is Nivriti Rai, and I'm the country president for Intel here in India, as well as I have a functional responsibility. I'm the vice president for Data Center Products Group. I'm going to be talking about the use of AI for population scale solutions. When the pandemic hit us early this year, it was unprecedented, it was prodigious, and it was unfortunate. What I'd like to tell you is that the world came crippling down on its knees this year. What were the reasons why I'm calling it prodigious, why I'm calling it unprecedented? The reasons are three, and all three get far more complex just because of the sheer scale. The first reason, who was impacted? The citizens were impacted, the enterprise impacted, as well as the government was impacted. The government's governance, as well as administration, as well as economics, everything got impacted. It spared no one. The second reason why it's unprecedented is the why and the what. The situation started rapidly changing and evolving. No one knew what was happening. There was lack of knowledge. The complexity was going on increasing. It started with, wait, this is a lung disease. People with asthma, you've got to be, very, very careful. Wait, no, it impacts the heart. There's inflammation in the heart. Further, there could be a liver impact. There could be a kidney impact. There could be a gastritis kind of impact. It became so complex that the treatment option the doctors had, was so difficult. What to address, what not to address, who should be given this medication versus who should be given that medication. It became really, really complex, really, really a wide set of treatments that were required. So scale, again, was a problem here. Thirdly, the third problem is what kind of treatments? What kind of data? Where to access the data from? There was lockdown, there's data protection, there was data movement regulation. All those issues were coming up. All those issues crippled the world to an extent. People were scared, there was fear, there was data movement guidelines. So the how became so much complex. And as the pandemic started, to touch India, two things came to my mind. Density of the population, 1.3 billion people. 20% of the world sitting in India, and very dense. Second, the GDP per capita of India is 1/5 of the world. While the world sees $10,000 per capita, India sees 2,000. So the challenge was, if it touches India and it grows widespread, like it was growing in other nations like Italy, it would be devastating for the country. The challenge was, this issue could be controlled and addressed only with the solution that is built on the backbone of technology. Technology was the only way we could come up with solution, and that too, the best of it. Intel India, AWS India, and Fractal, and a host of other local partners started working together closely to build an open architecture-based solution. Open API, locally hosted, cloud-based, all of this to enable multiple citizen-centric apps and augment the kind of work that both state government and central government were doing to manage this pandemic at the population scale. I often use the word population scale because it's very befitting for the country like India. The data is humongous. The challenges are therefore, multifold. Just to give you an idea, the number of companies working with us were not just the three of us. Intel, AWS, and Fractal, there were 14 to 15 other companies. The alpha personalities, we were working with, everybody coming up with their A game, everybody coming up with the best portfolio products. That's another story, another challenge, which we could discuss some other day. But bringing together 17, 18 different companies, all leaders, all having great ideas, was another challenge. The scale of the problem that we were dealing with was daunting. So what was it requiring at that moment? It needed the strongest, most committed leadership. It needed the smartest technologist, and it needed the best portfolio of products to address this pandemic at population scale. What comes into your mind? Two companies, AWS and Intel. And that's where the two of us stood tall to drive the leadership and to come up with the solution that was required to address this pandemic. We had already identified the requirement of this pandemic. We had understood that it was going to be a cloud-based solution, and it was requiring a scale that nobody had heard of. Intel often works very, very closely with the communities and has a goal to become a responsible corporation. Our CEO, Bob Swan, has built a purpose for us. And the purpose goes to say that Intel will build world-leading technologies that enriches and affects the life of every single person on this earth. Few words that stick out. Every single person and earth. When I say every single person, the one country you cannot miss is India. It houses 20% of the world's population. And when you say earth, then you think enabling technologies, and you think enabling technologies that help the environment. One program that Intel is driving is called RISE. It stands for Responsible, Inclusive, and Sustainable Technologies that can come together to solve global challenges. Global challenges that require cutting-edge technologies, leading technologies, and are also enabling scale. So looking at population. We know that solutions like this require partnership. I do not believe such large-scale problems can be solved independently. They have to be done in a collaborative manner. Collaboration with industry partners, collaboration with academia, as well as collaboration with government. As Intel India, we have partnered on many such national level problems and come up with ways where we have an ability to come up with contextualized, annotated data sets, to build solutions which have unique algorithms, as well as has support in terms of policy regulatory requirement. The three focus areas that we have looked at is health, we've looked at smart mobility, and we've also looked at education. Over the last 2.5 years, we've been collecting data from the road, trying to come up with technologies for smart mobility. India sees 17 deaths in an hour. Very unfortunate statistic. So we've been collecting data and trying to analyze and come up with safety algorithms that can, be saving these 17 deaths that happen on the road. In terms of health, we have come up with few diagnostics. We've collected a lot of data on bone degeneration. We've collected data on lung cancer detection, and we've also used our technology to make the diagnostics faster. For example, a molecular dynamic simulation code called NAMD, which we have used, enables 2 times faster diagnosis. We've used our AVX512 technology to enable this. I also must tell you that while you think of Intel as a silicon company, while you think of Intel as a hardware company, we have about 15,000 some software engineers who are working on all different kinds of optimizations. If you think of software, we build embedded software. We work, to make sure that the hardware is optimized with the OS all the way to application level optimization. I must also tell you that we have solutions where we leverage, for example, software libraries like OpenVINO, and we have enabled diagnostics, which is 40 times to 100 times faster by the use of these open source software for diagnosis of bone degeneration as well as cancer. What does this tell us? This tells us that over the last so many years, technology has become critical to be able to solve problems at population scales, and health being one. What better time to push technology solutions than we are in the state now? So the whole purpose of sharing this information is that we built the capability, we have the portfolio of products, and we have a direction coming from our CEO and coming from our leadership team to use cutting edge technologies that enriches the life of every single person on this earth. The intent is that this needs to become the DNA of how we work. While value creation, economic gains is definitely our goal, but while we do that, becoming a corporate citizen is also extremely, extremely critical for Intel. What does this tell us now? That we have portfolio products, we have intent, we have capabilities, we have a hunger, and we have a very complex problem to solve. My next slide tells you that this problem, which we have identified, to look at how do we come up with a solution that can somehow, monitor and create reports based on the understanding and the analysis of data that we get from this pandemic. When we started our conversation with the government to flesh out what are the key tenets of this pandemic platform, few things that came out that this solution, this platform needs to be real time. Data is coming, every day, 24/7. We've got to make sure that the dashboard that we display, the reports that we create are real time. This solution that we build has to have open architecture. There are a variety of devices providing us data. There's a variety of different systems, creating data. Various districts, cities, villages, providing us data. It had to be open in the way it was collecting data and the way it was architected. 20% of the world population means that this solution has got to be scalable and flexible. Flexible as we get more and more learnings. We've got to be able to change on the fly depending on the need of this hour. I wanted to tell you, just as a side note, within Intel, we ourselves, it's like eat your own dog food. We realized that if we look at the big data analytics solution and flow, we should implement it within Intel. There's piece of data sitting here, the customer, there's pieces of data sitting in the factory, there are pieces of data that, are with the design guys, whole lot of information sitting in different databases. What we did is we leverage our own solution, data analytics solution. And I'm happy to tell you that in just last year, just by the sheer of building a big data analytics solution within Intel, we were able to realize a $1.25 billion business value. That's how important understanding the architecture, understanding the solution, and then implementing is. So most of you would have heard, plan, do, check, act. But when we talk about AI-based solutions, we are talking about, a workflow which starts with ingest. Ingest a whole lot of data, from multiple sources. Prepare. That data doesn't have, standard formats. You have to create and prepare your data such that your algorithms could leverage them effectively. Then obviously after you have prepared the data comes the analyze phase and eventually act. That solution that you have built needs to be acted upon. Now, all these processes and flows that I talked about are pretty damn challenging. When you think of, the very first ingest, you're getting data from multiple sources, multiple devices, different regions, perhaps even different languages. The challenges are so vast that if you blink your eyelid and miss out on certain change, certain requirement, the whole solution can fall flat. A whole lot of contextualization, annotation needs to be done before we start the analysis process. This whole solution is not just simply model building, experimenting, but watching out, addressing at every step, the changes, the flexibility, the scale that is a requirement. And finally, it comes down to, you have a model that you have built, you have an experiment that you have verified with. Now you can look at driving the action part. Remember that with AI, the four things that become really, really critical is we've got to make sure that, our solution is not susceptible to bugs. Our solution does not have a lot of bias. Our solution cannot be manipulated or, easily be infected by malware. So bias, bugs, malware, manipulation is something that we also had to look at and drive security as the inherent architecture feature. Once we drove all of this action part, we were able to generate dashboards for governments, governance, and administration, for health institutes, diagnostics and management, as well as control, and even looking at patients, how do they manage and control. Some of the dashboards that we were able to create was risk hotspot, mobility passport, disease spread, transmissibility, severity factors, care readiness, and many such things. Now what we were able to do is all of this was generated or planned or experimented on top of the regulatory and legal requirement that the country had. So what we had is now a framework, an experiment, a POC ready. What we needed is to work with the stakeholders and customers and look at how do we apply this solution and enable the customers to use it. Now we already have a wonderful vision, an idea as to how to build the solution. What we were able to accomplish is the finalized solution vision and what were the technological requirements in terms of architecture as well as building blocks. We also looked at customers and the key stakeholders and onboarded them. We got them to contribute, we got them to participate, as well as heard from them what were their requirements. We also leveraged the very rich, prolific ecosystem of AWS India as well as Intel India and got them to participate with us in building this pandemic solution. Now, Intel and AWS has a long history of working together. We have worked on many fantastic solutions which will be addressing the needs for today as well as scale to address the needs of the future. Andy Jassy, who's the CW of AWS, says Intel is a very deep partner of AWS and will be for a very long time. That's not changing. To add to it, Rahul Sharma, one of the leaders of AWS India, says that since we are connected at the hip, Nivriti, let's work with trust, let's work with commitment, and let's drive innovation that is required to solve such population scale challenges in the terms of pandemic that we have. Now, Intel and AWS have worked on many a partnership. Fundamentally, Intel believes that the hardware infrastructure that we leverage to build solutions on have to be, open, such that different partners, different contributors could look at driving and building more innovations. We could leverage their creativity. Many of the engagements that we have, partnered with AWS range from IoT to, developer leveraging Alexa voice services to Amazon Echo Show and so on. One specific one that I want to talk about is the Amazon EC2. Amazon EC2 is the compute, the elastic compute that we have that, in cloud that web services could be based off. This provides secure, resizable compute such that, security as well as the needs which are driven from dynamic changes could be leveraging this resizable capability that this solution has. This met the need that exactly this platform required, this pandemic platform required. So we now had a platform on which this solution could be built. We roped in many partners to look at this cloud platform that we have and leverage it to build a solution that was open architecture. I must tell you that the two states which were the customers for this pandemic platform were Karnataka and Telangana. Just to give you an idea of scale and the complexity we were going to delve into, Karnataka state is as large as France or even United Kingdom. And Telangana is as large as the country of Canada. Each participant was supposed to bring in their A game, their A players, their best technology solution, the portfolio of products. Only then could we build this complex a problem. What we needed, like I said before, is technology to be the backbone of this solution, this pandemic solution. But I must also tell you that not only did this solution needed a technology to be the backbone, but needed this technology to have a soul. Because none of the participants were going to benefit by contribution. They needed to bring their best technologists and they needed to provide the best portfolio components to build this solution for the need of the society, for the population good. This platform was built by multiple companies. None of them own it. This platform is open source. People can add on top of it. It's built with open APIs. It's cloud-based and it is for population scale. So we have looked at implementing this into the two states that I talked about. And it is today still being used and will continue to be used, and perhaps look at leveraging them for other states, other large states that we have. So in order to talk about, more about the technology solutions, Fractal was a key partner that, was building the algorithms required, building the solutions to address the needs we have for the government, for health institutes, as well as for the patients. I would like to invite Srikanth to share the details on the solution that was built. So Srikanth, over to you.
My name is Srikanth Velamakanni. I'm a co-founder and group chief executive of Fractal, an AI firm. For the next 15 minutes, I'm going to describe the work we did with the governments of Telangana and Mumbai to manage the pandemic of COVID 19. Fractal's leadership team was in London on February 25th and 26th for an AI conference, followed by a company wide town hall when it dawned upon us that COVID 19 crisis is getting worse and spreading globally. We immediately imposed some travel restrictions. And as soon as I got back to Mumbai, I decided to write to some state and local authorities, telling them about the value of data and how analytics and AI could prevent the spread of the disease and help state and local authorities manage the pandemic better. Mumbai is a city of 20 million people. A quarter of those 20 million commute by local trains every day. The first few cases in Mumbai were detected in early March. And on 21st March, I got a call from Mr. Praveen Pardeshi, the Municipal Commissioner of Mumbai. He wanted some help. Within a few minutes of that call, I decided to call Rahul Sharma, CEO of AWS India. And within a few hours of that, we were on a long WebEx conference call with Mumbai Police as well as the Mumbai Municipal Authority called BMC. They needed help. And the first thing they were looking to do was to track the number of arrivals in Mumbai over the last 1 month. They wanted to look at everyone who had arrived in Mumbai beginning from March 1st and see where they were, what kind of symptoms they had, what were their activity levels, and use that to predict the spread of the disease. Soon, the problem kept changing. The problem immediately was, after that, was how do we model the spread of the disease? Then, a few days later, the problem became how do you manage healthcare capacity? And then it was about how do we get patients into hospitals in as short a time as possible? And eventually, it was about how do we get industries reopened again? So the nature of the problem evolved every single day over the 6 months that we were engaged with the Mumbai Municipal Corporation. I'm not at liberty to tell you all the data sources that we used in solving this problem, but suffice to say that the data was very complex and it came from different sources and it was incredibly difficult to analyze and manipulate. I wasn't very confident that we could put together any solution given the complexity of the data and given that the problem itself was changing on a daily basis. But sure enough, with the help of AWS and our wonderful team, who we called as Fractal Corona Warriors, we put together the solution within 4 days. We had the first set of dashboards and decision cockpits ready for the local authorities by 25th of March. Coincidentally, on 24th, India declared a 21-day strict lockdown, and it started on 25th, leaving the citizens of Mumbai only 4 hours to prepare. As we went on building the solution, it became clear that there were 4 vectors of response. First was to predict the spread of the disease and manage the spread of the disease. It meant we had to build mathematical models at a zone level and at a ward level. Mumbai has 6 zones and 24 wards. We needed to see how the disease will spread at each zone and ward level. It meant we had to create a new metric called RT, or real-time transmission indicator, as opposed to R, which is usually used in epidemiological models. This helped us in finding out not just looking at the spread at a zone and ward level, but how it was spreading on a real-time basis. The next thing was to use this data and these estimates to predict healthcare capacity within the city of Mumbai, and soon it was Telangana and Karnataka. The idea was to predict how many hospital beds would be required, how many ICU beds will be required, what is the need for healthcare workers, PPEs, and even ventilators. After that, the other very important dimension of response was about making sure citizens understand the importance of this disease and importance of wearing masks and taking several precautions so that they could reduce the spread of the disease. So we had to make sure that the information that was available to the local authorities was also, a lot of that or most of it was available to the citizens, and there were enough guidance provided to them. And finally, once India started unlocking after a few stages of lockdown, we wanted to make sure that as industries opened, we could look at the population that was traveling from their home location to the work location and what impact that may have on the spread of the disease. It meant that we could prioritize what kind of industries should open first and what next. These were the vectors of response. Fractal has a very sophisticated data to decision process. And we believe that it's not just about data science and machine learning, but it's about design combined with data that really produces great results. So Fractal put together this process to not just design and frame and reframe the problem, but to ingest all the data, organize it, process it, and then design it for consumption and decision making. That came in very handy in managing the pandemic. We could look at the spread of the disease at a very hyper local level, provide citizens as well as the local authorities with decision making tools so that they could inform the public as well as manage the disease in a better way. We could also look at the spread of the disease at a very, very micro level, at a zone level, at a ward level, and use that to make several decisions like create containment zones and so on. We could also help in looking at the healthcare capacity and predict the healthcare capacity and make sure that at no point during the entire crisis there was complete shortage of beds. There was a time in Mumbai in May and June where Mumbai was running with 2 or 3 hospital beds left in the entire city. But then, thanks to some of the work we did, we could actually expand some healthcare capacity and manage and make sure that people didn't die needlessly. Once we started reopening the industry, we started looking at how are people commuting to work and what that commute means. Do they bring the disease from where they're commuting from, and do they actually take back the disease to their homes at the end of the day, and what that would mean in terms of the spread of the disease. I remember this extremely well. In the middle of this pandemic, once we had enough fatalities in Mumbai, unfortunately, more than 6,000 fatalities, we decided to analyze all the data of the people who had passed away and see what are the trends underlying that and what are the risks of comorbidities. And we held this 2-hour conference call with the top 10 doctors of Mumbai who were charged with managing the pandemic overall. And we could walk them through what the data said about the comorbidities. For example, age. What was the correlation of age with increased mortality risk? And some comorbidities like hypertension, tuberculosis, and diabetes. This immediately resulted in Mumbai making several decisions about senior citizens being quarantined and other kinds of decisions around treatment, which also reduced the overall fatalities. The AWS Intel Fractal COVID-19 platform provided us with advantages of agility, flexibility, and scalability. We could build data pipelines quickly thanks to tools such as AWS Athena and AWS Glue to speed up data ingestion and preparation. Glue ETL enabled us to integrate complex Apache Spark transformations without worrying about things like cluster resource management and high availability. AWS Athena's serverless query service enabled us to query stored data on AWS S3 buckets without the need for dedicated servers. Athena's seamless integration with Tableau was critical as well. And the AWS team was always there to help and really agile. Given the rapidly evolving nature of our client needs, flexibility was critical. We could quickly leverage various SaaS tools such as Mapbox and Power BI depending on the need. And from a scalability standpoint, we were adding data sources every few days, but we didn't have to worry about capacity constraints because of the inherent scalability of the platform. Yes, this pandemic is far from over, but I feel great that AWS Intel Fractal partnership could make a real difference to the city of Mumbai and the state of Telangana. Thank you.